In the early days of the internet, radical libertarians were scattered, lonely, and faceless. Without direction, they resigned to scour the web, sifting through content providers in a wasteland plagued by YouTube demonetization, Facebook jail, and covert internet censorship. But then, in 2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.
All right. Let's get fired up here.
Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Hello and welcome to the Actual Anarchy podcast, where we talk about movies from a Rothbardian and Anarcho-capitalist perspective. And tonight, you'll love it. We're talking about Scrooged with Mike C. from our Night of the Living Dead episode. This can be found at actualanarchy.com/56. And this will come out on Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas, everyone. We hope that you have a very nice time with your friends and your family and all that good stuff. And do join us. We're going to be having a couple of additional episodes coming out later in the next couple of weeks. I believe we're going to do The Ghost in the Shell. And we've got a whole slate of episodes coming up in January. We even have the possibility of doing a Christmas episode, but it's still up in the air at the moment. Santa may or may not find his way through the storm to give us the guest that we're seeking, but maybe Rudolph will get out there with his nose so bright and help us out a little bit. So that if, you'll find it the day after this one comes out. It'll come out on Christmas Day if it is a episode for us. And I did also want to mention that it is Merry Christmas, and in fact, you're in for a treat because I just completed adding 23 additional Murray Rothbard lectures. 10 of them are video of Murray providing the lectures, and I've added these to the Rothbard repository, which is a keyword searchable database of now 83, I believe, or 84 separate Murray Rothbard lectures, where you can keyword search for a term, and then all of the lectures in which he discussed that term are brought up. Then you can open them and do a control find and get the actual timestamp of when he discussed that particular point. So there's thousands and thousands of quotes on hundreds of subjects, nearly 100 hours, if not more, of Murray speaking, lecturing, imparting knowledge on Austrian Economics, libertarianism, contemporary news events of the time period between the 1970s and 80s and early 90s. Right before he died, he has a really great talk on the future of libertarianism right after the fall of the Soviet Union. So that one's definitely one worth checking out. That's one of the new ones. And the other cool thing is you can get access to the Rothbard repository in any number of ways. There are, of course, you can do a direct purchase. So go to repository.readrothbard.com. You can pay, I think it's $10.95 a month to get access, or conversely, you could also sign up for Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom on our link, and that's available at the actualanarchy.com page or on the repository page itself. If you buy any level of the Tom Wood Liberty Classroom, you will get the Rothbard repository thrown in as a bonus. And there are multiple levels of the Tom Woods Liberty Classroom, and in fact, through the end of this month, the end of the year, you can get $150 off the normal sale price of the master level membership. So if you are on the fence, let me get you off that fence by letting you know that you can get the Rothbard repository and save $150. We'll also throw in on any level a Read It For Me, readitfor.me basic membership, and that's a really cool service where they take business and personal development books, digest them down into 10 to 12 minute summaries, videos, audio, or you can read a PDF, and rather than reading the entire 300-page book, you can get most of the content or the main key concepts in under 15 minutes. So it's a great way for people who are really busy, have their fingers in too many pies, too many things going on, to where you still want to do some development, still want to do some learning, still want to try to find a way to cram in a little bit more information into that noggin of yours I know I suffer from that myself, so Read It For Me is a really good service for that for me. So I want to share that with you guys. You can get that as a bonus on top of the repository if you buy Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom. The third and final way in which you can get the Rothbard repository is if you support us on Patreon for a $10 a month or more level, and that can be found at patreon.com/readrothbard. There's a link to that on our tip jar page and also on the repository page. So those are the 3 different ways in which you can get the Rothbard repository. It's super awesome. I have a few other tricks up my sleeves in the works that I might be able to share with you in the future that will make this thing even cooler than it is now. And in the meantime, do check us out at our actualanarchy.com/tipjar page, and you can find out all the other ways that you can support us. You can start your Amazon shopping. You can get cheap cell phone service from Republic Wireless. They just renewed that offer, so if you click on our link, you'll save $20 off of your first month. Another thing you can do is get your hosting through Bluehost with us. And you know what? I'll throw in the Rothbard repository if you do that as well. So click on our Bluehost link. That's on our tip jar page or at the very bottom of the page at actualanarchy.com. I will also update the repository with that information so that you can find the Bluehost link, and that'll be a 4th way to get the repository. This episode where we're going to be talking about Scrooged with Mike C., who was with us for our Night of the Living Dead episode, which I'm going to find out which number that was. I think it was 47. You can find this one at actualanarchy.com/56. Ladies and gentlemen, returning guest from episode 47, The Night of the Living Dead, we have Mike C. He came to us via the Liberty Weekly podcast. He was a fan of theirs, and he heard about our show and then reached out and said he wanted to be a guest. And so we did do that, and now we have him back. And you're going to love it. You'll love it. This episode of the Actual Anarchy podcast, episode 56, talking about Scrooged. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm happy to hijack another holiday special.
Yeah, the jury's still out. We have a diminishing shot at still doing the Scrooge McDuck for Christmas.
Well, where there's a hope, or hope springs eternal, I guess, especially in the...
Revolutions are built on hope.
Yeah, revolutions are built on hope. I think I'd go with the whole solstice thing, right, where the sun's at its lowest, and we just got to hold out for it to come back.
Oh, yeah, that's today, right? Yeah.
No,
officially winter tomorrow?
Yeah.
And then
this
this
should be
episode...
the middle of winter, though, realistically. Like, I feel like our seasons should be bookended with the solstices and equinoxes in the center of the season, but whatever. It's always bugged me.
Well, you take that up with Julian, all right? Or Gregory.
Okay.
Whichever calendar we're on. I don't really know. Yeah. Julian calendar?
Mm.
So tonight we're going to talk about the Bill Murray movie Scrooged, and we usually start out with a Google description. So this came out in 1988, fantasy drama, 1 hour, 41 minutes, 7 out of 10 on the IMDb, 68% Rotten Tomatoes. Came out November 23rd, 1988, so it looks like a Christmas or a Thanksgiving release for the Christmas season. And the Google description says, in this modern take on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Frank Cross, played by Bill Murray, is a wildly successful television executive whose cold ambition and curmudgeonly nature has driven away the love of his life, Claire Phillips. But after firing a staff member, Elliot Loudermilk, played by Bobcat Goldthwait, on Christmas Eve, Frank is visited by a series of ghosts who give him a chance to reevaluate his actions and right the wrongs of his past. Director Richard Donner, Put a Little Love in Your Heart, and what's the other thing? Oh yes, We'll Own Christmas. Robert, any? Yeah, that was one of the lines.
I take umbrage with the idea that he made mistakes. I mean, the only mistake he really made, I think, was that he, left his girlfriend, which I don't understand how she likes him at all. He's a total asshole in this whole movie, and for some reason she still likes him. I don't get it. I mean, the real Bill Murray, sure. But the character he plays in this movie is not a kind person to anybody, so I didn't buy that relationship at all. But it's other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, it was weird that he was able to keep employees.
Yeah, how terribly he treated them.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a '80s comedy. But that release date is just cowardly.
When was it?
Like the 23rd of November. I mean, that's just I feel like December 12th, 15th.
Yeah, gross and balls.
It just seems like.
What were they up against? Who knows?
Yeah, I have to look it up. I should have. That would have been some good sort of cred. I was kind of jealous. You did not Hard-Boiled, Die Hard without me. But I'm glad you guys found a Die Hard version for it. That's one special Christmas movie for sure.
Yeah, this whole month's been Christmas movies. Die Hard was great. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and if you heard our review, it's one of my top movies now.
Yeah, well, you talked about localization of authority, and I mean that's always kind of in action films, if you noticed. At least since then, the hero is always a renegade to begin with, no matter what. It's always like government bad, soldier good, right? And the state is the only person that can give this guy this power, right? So, I mean, in the modern sort of version of that, it's usually some guy that's just sick of war or whatever. He's got this shadow on his back, right?
Or recently retired or whatever.
Yeah, and he's just, I can't the killing or whatever, right? And then I'm gonna go kill 1,000 more men today. But Die Hard's really good because it's about family and reconciling with his wife, and like, I don't know, I got choked up when he was talking about how like he wanted to apologize and he couldn't, because in the end it didn't matter. Now that 12 terrorists had seized Nakatomi Plaza, he should have supported her career and all this stuff, right? So there's some that's like some PC female empowerment as well that's quite palatable. You know what I mean? Didn't piss me off. It wasn't shoehorned in. It was just like the central conflict, or the sort of sub-conflict of the film, was this whole like husband and wife thing in the 90s or the 80s, on top of one of the best villains ever made.
Hans Gruber. Hey, Daniel, the first thing I want to mention in this movie, I thought Die Hard was my favorite Christmas movie of all time, but The Night the Reindeer Died looked fucking awesome. Yeah. That movie, I would watch that movie and just love it, and watch it with as many people as possible. Oh, man, it looks so good. I wanted it to be real.
And you'd follow it with the Bob Goulet Cajun Christmas, right?
Yeah. All those ads that appear in the beginning looked fantastic.
Yeah.
It should have been made into real things. But anyway.
No. Yeah, it's kind of got that Tarantino effect where when they did Grindhouse, people wanted to watch the movies that they made trailers of. Oh, and they made it. They made Hobo with a Shotgun. They made Machete. That's how good the trailers were. So. Yeah,
I know what you mean.
So Trey Parker, Matt Stone got started. They shot Cannibal the Musical, but they shot the trailer, and then they went to people for financing, saying that they were in post and raised enough money to make the movie from their trailer.
That's actually a very brilliant move, and it's a tactic that I talked about with a buddy of mine. I was like, okay, always have one more level for things that you're offering to people, and charge enough for it to make it worth doing if somebody takes you up on the offer. But that way you don't have to do it ahead of time. Like, you don't have to create this product. Just say, oh, that one's going to be like $1,000. Well, that way if no one ever takes you up on the offer, you never have to do it. But if somebody does, then it's worth it to you to do it then for the $1,000, and you've got that like kick in the ass, like, all right, somebody's now depending on me to do it. There's like a time crunch and there's money at play. But if you're offering something, always have that one more, and you don't even have to like have it really done. Just know that you can do it, and that way, if somebody takes you up on the offer, just like with the Matt Stone and Trey Parker thing.
Well, in their case, they were defrauding their investors.
Well,
essentially.
But
yeah, no, I like the idea. I like where you're going with that.
Yeah, it's one louder. Go from 10 to 11.
Oh yeah, let's do Spinal Tap.
All right, so before I derailed you guys, I wanted to also mention that in the Wikipedia it says that Bill Murray was very well known for Ghostbusters, kind of riding the success of that. So I guess in some of the promos for this, the tagline was, Bill Murray is back among the ghosts, only this time it's 3 against 1. So they're totally playing on the Ghostbusters stuff there still.
That's
right,
smart.
in the Ghostbuster hotels. Yeah, smart marketing.
So
Not
Richard Donner
accurate,
said,
but...
You saying?
What? Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, no, just Richard Donner, I found a quote where he said that this was where Bill Murray became an actor. So he was a well-known comedian until then, and then he was an actor after this because he kind of acts, I guess.
He gets teary-eyed.
A little bit, yeah. I suppose he acts a little bit.
He sold me on the finale.
The finale of the Confession, you were choking up about it? I appreciate that. 10
times in a row now, so... I mean, I'm not bawling anymore, but I cry in movies. I'm quite the pussy.
I cry like a baby. But when Put a Little Love in Your Heart played during the credits, I got up and danced. So I was enjoying myself. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I looked up some theaters did have people singing. Well, there are accounts of people singing on forums that I looked up. Yeah. Like, some of them didn't, obviously. There's a huge level of cynicism. But it's nice to know that, like, somebody would have experienced that. That would have been pretty special.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, you guys forgot Father Loves Beaver.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
He's out chasing beaver again. Oh, man. That wouldn't even land with audience. You'd have to explain it.
I did write down, the note, Father Loves Beaver. I thought that was another fantastic one. Absolutely.
I'll check it off.
Yeah, I did mention it. Okay.
Well, that takes me into our first note here. What do you think of his strategy of scaring the dickens out of people?
I like all the puns in this film. I think they did a pretty good job with that. Okay, so can we draw a distinction between capitalism as a concept and crass commercialism? because you can critique commercialism or even consumerism without actually saying that the system of trading money for things is wrong. You know, one is more of is less economic or ideological and more just in terms of like honor and tact and how people should behave. And again, we were talking earlier about how shame and guilt are much better substitutions for laws than having like authority come down on people and having strict, lines where things are okay and not okay, but rather guilting people into behavior and shaming them is much better than giving an authority power.
Absolutely.
So you can criticize commercialism, I think, and make some pretty valid arguments about, how it might be a detriment to society without actually endorsing the violence of, authority or laws or whatnot. That makes sense.
By commercialism, you mean putting value on possessions above people? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, something like that. Or consumerism, I guess, is another word for it. I'm not really sure how to articulate that idea, but like the disposability of our lives. I think they covered a little bit in Fight Club. We talked about single-serving lives. But, I mean, those are improvements. So I don't want to say that those are necessarily evil. But, I mean, the trailer he has for their show they're going to put on with like the terrorist plane blowing up, like the nuclear mushroom cloud. I mean, I think that the comedy of that is that he's illustrating how the guy's got no bottom, for how low he'll go to sell an idea, right? He's kind of like a used car salesman in a lot of ways. Not that those
for
people
sure.
are bad people.
Yeah, he will. But is he ultimately responsible for the death that it ultimately claims?
No, absolutely not. I'm sure they'd argue that now. But my point is, it's okay to criticize those things, right? Like it's almost important to criticize those things when people are being kind of shitty people, but not illegal, right? That makes so like a lot of these movies will like, especially in the 80s and 70s and 90s and stuff. It wasn't this full-blown assault on our economic systems. It was just like, hey, we're kind of getting out of control and people are being kind of shitty to each other, so remember to be nice to each other is a very central theme in a lot of these kinds of movies, right? Especially Christmas movies. It's about, focusing on the family instead of the crass commercialism of making sure you get the right toy or whatnot. I think Charlie Brown did it first. Well, in a much more sort of Christian way, I guess.
Yeah, no, Daniel, you wanted to talk about this a bit, I know, right? You wanted to talk about the if it bleeds, it leads, if his tact in marketing this show.
Yeah, there's many different facets that I saw in this, and that he was trying to go to base emotions to sell this thing. So he's using fear. Sometimes they use sex. Sometimes they use other tactics to get an emotional, visceral response. And he was telling people that they needed to watch this special as if their lives depended on it, and they had all the imagery and the mushroom cloud and all that stuff that you were talking about. But in a way, it is sensationalizing to get the attention, but it's also fraudulent, right? Like, he's misrepresenting what this is. I mean, this is a Dickens classic with Mary Lou Retton as Tiny Tim. Like, there's nothing about terrorists in this. There's nothing of, and of course, it's,
I mean, that's just how
they're playing with that in the movie. But it reminded me of The War of the Worlds. Was that H.G. Wells? And who read it out on the radio? And
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles, okay.
He read it.
Yeah, and people started thinking that it was like actually happening and had a bit of a hysteria. I read into it a little bit a few years ago, and I guess it wasn't as much of a hysteria as I think is often thought of. Like, it was actually very isolated.
They'll take the most extreme example and hold that up as, this can happen. Or, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a warning. It can just be like, here's an interesting thing that happened in this most extreme circumstance. Right,
yeah. And so this instance of him doing this promo reminded me of that instance of The War of the Worlds. And if it bleeds, it leads, the sensationalism, the selling on the emotional, visceral stuff. And he even had the sex thing in there where they could see the nipples of one of the dancers. And I think he said, I think if Chuck Dickens were here, he'd want to see your nipples.
My favorite line is like, I can't really see them. And these guys are really looking. Like, that comedy just doesn't happen anymore. Bill Murray's just got such a brutal, dry wit to him. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of this is Murray ad-libbing, because in Ghostbusters, apparently he ad-libbed many of his lines.
Same.
Yeah.
Same, except for like key plot points, but definitely they just gave him a pretty long leash, from what I hear.
Yeah.
Which you would want to do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Use everyone's mind as much as you can. Try not to structure things from the top down too unilaterally.
Well, so let's talk about, there would be feedback or blowback, I would suppose, from the way that he made this ad, right? I mean, like Daniel's saying, it is a bit of false advertising. So when they do tune in, one, they would be seeing content that they would not be expecting. But also, there might be people that would be turned off by this level of advertising, right? I mean,
yeah, well,
all the people in that room were.
Yeah, but in this universe, the masses are eating it up, right? And so he's, I mean, in a lot of ways, the film is about leadership and how he should lead the people that he's brainwashing or that he's speaking to in a more positive way, which is ultimately how the climax plays out, right? So,
well, yeah, and I had a problem with that. I mean, how the climax plays out, like when the Ghost of Christmas Future, and we're skipping ahead, I know, but whatever, is this Grim Reaper guy, and he shows him the scene that hasn't happened yet of his girlfriend mistreating some poor kids, and she's turned into this, carbon copy of him, all from this one conversation that he had.
Well,
Frank just said this one thing to me, and then blah, blah, blah. That gives Frank way too much credit, way too much power of influence over people.
Yeah, but I mean, it's his own fear. It's his fear of the future. It's not reality.
Okay, well, if you take it that way, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I have to. Otherwise, I can't reconcile the lack of logic, like you just pointed out. So.
Okay, fair enough.
And that was the scrape him off, save yourself?
Yeah, and I mean, it would be horrible because what he liked about her was her more feminine sort of qualities, right? Her maternity,
innocence,
her love, and
caring.
what ultimately sort of pushed them apart, right? So he shows up to the 9th Street shelter, and she's actually committing herself to work the way he commits himself to work. So in that way, they're very similar. They could have the same. In fact, that's actually what ends up having like the fallout, right? Where he doesn't have her time or her attention immediately, which is presumably what her complaint was in the previous act, right, in the past. So, but he's upset not with her giving charity, but how poorly it's run. You know what I mean? So I thought that was kind of funny. But I guess the movie points to the idea that the people that are giving have a hard time organizing, right? So
yeah, he said something to the effect that they're volunteers because no one would pay them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this. He's so despicable, but he's so likable at the same time. Only Bill Murray could have pulled this off because the original Ebenezer was a user. He was into usury, moneylender, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this guy is Frank Cross. So there's more of a Christian kind of undertone to it.
Yeah, did you guys notice in the room where he met his brother, they had that
the cross definition?
Yeah, the cross definition across the top of the wall. There's a cross, something you nail people to.
Yeah, he's. I'm at the. Oh man, we're just jumping all over the place. You may have to cut this up because we're going right to the end.
Well,
do you want to take it scene by scene?
A little bit. I have another thing because we got to set the scene with Loudermilk, right? Because he's the guy telling Cross hey, we've already been running some of these other promos and it's getting a response, and our studies indicate that people are going to tune in. And he's like, "Shut up, Loudermilk," and he fires him. Yeah,
he's a shitty employer, really, in a lot of ways.
Right, but it just seems a little bit weird to me that somebody who's seeking to be profitable in their business, would disregard the research that they're doing that indicates that, hey, this thing is going to play really well, it's going to be profitable. But I guess he's kind of a maverick.
He's power hungry as well. He sees that as, he's devoted his life to becoming in charge, so that's why he's so afraid of the second guy coming in.
Right, but if he's such a maverick, then why does he even pay for this research to be done in the first place, if he's not going to take it into account? That doesn't make any sense.
Right, especially if he's so cheap in so many other ways, like he's handing out towels as Christmas gifts, and apparently he's underpaying his secretary.
Well, it kind of gets muddled, too, because how much of that money is his? Does he own the company? Is he a CEO? Is he an executive?
Yeah, I think they say
he's like the head of whatever, but it didn't say.
So I'm not sure, how much money he gets to keep himself when he gives people towels, but we just kind of, because this is taking place in the 80s and not, 1875, or whenever Dickens wrote his stuff, right? So it doesn't. It honestly, it starts to fall apart when you start poking holes at it like that, for sure. But he's a miser.
What we do.
No, and that's totally fair. He's a miser. He's sort of power hungry as well as money hungry, so he doesn't listen to other people's opinions. He gets paranoid when his boss brings in another guy to start directing this project of his, because he knows that he has to fight this guy for his position.
Right.
So. But it's not. It's not unfounded. Ultimately, that guy's after his job. So.
Yeah.
I wonder. This is in '88. I wonder. This movie actually has elevator operators, which don't exist anymore. Maybe in some places.
Going down,
sir. But I wonder when those actually went away. Thanks to advancements.
I think
Or
it would
was
have been a status symbol back then anyway. Like in the 88, it would have been a status symbol more than a necessity.
Technological necessity, right? Yeah, probably. Anyway, didn't mean to derail us.
No,
No, it's okay.
there's a bit of I think Rothbard talks about it, or maybe it's Walter Block. He talks about when the elevator operators either had a minimum wage increase or they unionized or something, and that you didn't see an immediate change, but within a couple of years you started seeing automation, and it's very similar to what's going on today with like fast food, as people demand higher and higher minimum wages and whatnot. That it
Right.
misallocates resources so that they'll invest in technologies to replace those overpriced inputs, which, I mean, I'm talking about people here, but, labor. Labor's overpriced, so then they're going to seek alternatives.
Right, faster than they otherwise would have.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they wouldn't have done it anyway at some point, but it certainly precipitated the change. That's a mixed metaphor, but you know what I mean.
Hey, we did some economics. It's good.
Well, yeah, Christmas movies are always like this too, right? Because if they make them properly, it doesn't really it shouldn't challenge capitalism unto itself. What it should do is say, hey, like, be as nice as we can so that no one has to step in and make it horribly worse.
Like, don't be a dick and steal some old lady's taxi cab?
Yeah, like, it's not a breach of the non-aggression principle, but you're hurting the game, You're hurting the game by being a monopoly. You're hurting the game by being too power-hungry, and ultimately yourself, because mankind should be your business. So Anarchy, I think one of the greatest benefits of it, or the greatest appeals, is that you don't utilize just one person's mind, you utilize everyone's input, right? So you can kind of transpose that onto leadership as well, right? A good leader will take the information that he or she can get from what's, sort of his or her subordinates and utilize that. So again, like, why would they do research that he wasn't going to listen to if he's, but that's his essential flaw, right? That's like the biggest flaw that's the flaw from the, the original character that they decided to focus on, I think, the most.
We mentioned his boss earlier, and his boss was into the research, and he was saying things like, the research is indicating that cats are now starting to watch television, so let's do programming for cats. So perhaps the Elliot Loudermouth research was directed from on high, and Bill Murray's character doesn't respect that because he is a maverick. He wants to do his own thing, and as it's revealed through Christmas Past, he's the one who's started at the ground floor and worked his way up within the company. Yeah, the mailroom to being the dog children's character and so on. So he's the one scrapping and trying to figure out ways to be unconventional and be successful. So I can see, now that we've sort of talked this through, that he didn't respect the Loudermilk stuff, but it was probably coming from his boss. Yep.
And, I mean, does that justify putting a mirror in a drawer beside your desk so that you can look at yourself before you address a table full of people? I don't know. That seems a little narcissistic.
I was wondering if that was like a Coke thing, because like in the 80s, Coke was a big deal.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. This felt it was edgy, but it didn't feel corrupt in that sense. I don't feel like there was a little bit of drinking, that's about it. It felt, and there's like, the sex was pretty like mellow. There was a sexuality to some of the dancers and stuff, but it wasn't, like, nothing was really vice-driven. I don't know. I just saw it as him being a narcissist, because for good reason. He came from the mailroom, and through his brilliance and gumption and elbow grease, he got himself right to the very top. So why would he listen to anybody?
Yeah, it's a good point, and let me take a second and defend Frank Cross, the original character, for a minute here. I would say he clearly has flaws. He's clearly not like a perfect human being. We're not all perfect human beings. But he's absolutely unnecessarily an asshole to many people for almost no reason. But he also creates a ton of value. Not only does he run this whole network, and he creates such amazing things like Father Loves Beaver and the Night the Reindeer Died. I mean, if it takes an asshole to create that sort of brilliant programming, I'm glad that asshole exists. If you get this kind of sanitized version of him at the end, and he's unable to make that sort of brilliant programming, then I'll probably, from a distance, prefer the original version, Frank Cross.
Yeah, well, presumably he would change a little bit, but, I mean, hopefully he maintains his ability to run a station, right? Network.
Yeah, I mean, but, capitalism is great because it allows for all these different creative people to offer their own unique perspectives and their unique contributions to the world. And I think that, maybe we don't get Father Loves Beaver if he's blubbering and crying and has a really happy home life, and maybe when he gets back together with what's her name, then maybe it's not so great.
So that's interesting you mentioned that, actually, because they specifically talk about that in his past. He was raised by television and had bad upbringing. I think Stefan Molyneux would have had a field day with that, who generally goes to bad parenting whenever there's something can't be solved.
Right.
But yeah, well, I'll do you one better. How about this? Coming back to your point originally.
All right.
The original character, Ebenezer Scrooge, would not have been able to help Tiny Tim unless he was a miser and had all that money. There's no way he could have been as extravagant and lush with his gifts when he had his epiphany if he wasn't filthy rich going into that scene. So it's kind of interesting, right? So
right, yeah.
You sort of, and I think this movie I like better than Dickens because they balance this. They make him, he's quite an appealing character, and you kind of, I don't mind that he's an asshole. I just think it's kind of funny, and you're like, oh, you're just hurting yourself. And then they explain it that, like, he was raised so-so, and he had a lack of confidence, and then he got a woman, and he moved his way up, and then he ended up losing her to his career because, he chose the one over the other, and he's embittered by the decision.
Right.
But, and then he's given a sort of a Christmas second chance kind of thing, right, by these ghosts, and they show him that maybe he should have balanced his home life with his work, what he wanted to accomplish, and ultimately that's that manifests ultimately in he's in a coffin, and like what are you leaving behind? A legacy of being a prick? Well, what was the point in climbing to straddle the top of the mountain or whatever if
he leaves behind Father Loves Beaver? I'm sorry, man.
No, don't get me wrong.
Night the Reindeer Died. He's a legend. He's a bloody legend.
Yeah, no, he invented the miniseries or something like that, right? He's the youngest. He's the youngest president in
IBC history.
IBC history. So, and that's true. But ultimately, it leaves him. He's realized. I mean, maybe the ghosts are just a manifestation of that, right?
All right, so let's go to the girlfriend situation, because I saw it differently. I saw her leave him.
She did,
because he was devoted to his job, and so she was not being supportive of him, knowing that he desired and needed to feel this validation of accomplishing things. So really, it's kind of on her.
Well, and a third way to say that is that they had different priorities, and ultimately both of them regretted the decision to part. Because at any point in a breakup, you can renegotiate, the deal breakers that the other person is presenting. So she probably came to him a few times and said, hey, I realize that this is important to you. Maybe you should back off a little bit because I'm starting to miss you. I liked you before when you were a bit more, less hungry or less ambitious, right? Which I've never heard from a woman in my life. But, sorry, I just derailed myself there.
I think that's an accurate criticism. I've never heard of a woman not enjoying their significant other's ambition.
Well, the fruits of
that's
it,
the one thing they look for.
Well, yeah, but presumably he gave too much of himself, so he needed that other person, that partner in his life, to help balance him out. And I mean, he found that that's why Jacob Marley, or what's the name of his boss in this? That was like
Marlowe.
his friend.
Lou.
So he disrupted, he imbalanced himself by finding a partnership in business rather than in love and the family, right? Which is fulfilling the natural order of things rather than just accumulating wealth. You should try to do both. That makes sense. I just don't think it's it doesn't negate the idea of getting into a position of power and accumulating wealth and then creating jobs and prosperity through that leadership. It doesn't negate the idea of having a family.
Yeah, and I think on an individual basis, you're right. He should have tried to strike a work-life balance that would have not left him wanting for that 15-year period where they were broken up.
Yeah.
But Mike makes a great point in that all his driving and determination has created this entertainment network that is able to employ all these people and provide jobs and wealth and security for all these people.
Yeah, and it goes way further. It goes way further in the original, the source material that you're getting it from, right? Because you can't get Tiny Tim the surgery he needs to save his life if he didn't have the money. I mean, now you could crowdsource it, so whatever. But
yeah, we've also made this point on our previous episode of doing the Christmas Carol, in that Scrooge was providing a valuable service. He was profitable. He was making money. Yeah. And with him being gone, we can only assume economically that his customers would have had to go to a lower tiered option, like the next best option, which would have been less profitable or less satisfactory to them as consumers.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. So but I don't think it's an indictment of even usury. I just think it's an indictment of being a miser, of not spending your money a little bit, and I mean if you're hogging all of the power for yourself too in terms of creativity. So if we move back to Cross, he was leading basically an artistic co-op that is a corporation producing Father Loves Beaver,
classic art like Father Loves Beaver, yes.
Yeah, it requires. The more people involved. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I got Star Wars on my mind, but Lucas's movies where he took them on all himself were garbage. But the ones that had many people involved and limitations, and the power was sort of shared around because of those limitations, were better. So I don't know if you'd get, I don't know if he made Father Loves Beaver so much as oversaw it, right? So you shouldn't be a miser you shouldn't hoard money. It needs to circulate, for one, right? You're allowed to hoard it if you want to whatever level. But there is a point at which, you're going to be able to spend it before you die, kind of thing. And then the same can be true. You can sort of transpose that model over power and in leadership positions as well, right? So it's kind of but it's not. The criticism isn't universal, like you said. It's a personal criticism. It's a character and a story. That's Yeah,
I mean, he was a shitty boss, but these people still work for him. So there wasn't somebody offering them a better job.
Yeah, presumably.
So, otherwise they would have taken it. So there's the secretary that was complaining about her Christmas bonus or the raise, and then the fairy ghost was like beating him up until he gave her a raise or promised to give her like a raise. I was really offended by that scene. So
it's like not his fault.
Her success is not his responsibility.
Yeah, it's not his fault. She's got 5 kids.
She was an excellent employee, though, and probably underappreciated. Now, can ghosts break the non-aggression principle?
That one did. They all did, right?
It's a toaster. Oh, what a fantastic movie.
Yeah, she's a great actress.
All right, so speaking of the non-aggression principle, let's talk about the two situations. One was the taxi cab he takes from the old lady. I feel like that was a property rights violation because she had, in the parlance of getting a cab at that time, she had hailed that cab.
Yeah, but it's up to the cabbie to
enforce it or recognize
to enforce
it?
that. Yeah, or to recognize it, and it may not matter to him. It's obviously not worth the time because his time is money, right? But I mean, maybe that's because of the city and their taxi driving medallions or something like that.
I'm going to disagree. I don't think it's up to the taxi driver per se to enforce that or not. I think that there is an expectation that this is how you hail a cab. She had hailed the cab. So I think that he violated, whether he was aware of it or not, I think he violated her in that way. And that sounds really dirty. But also I think Uber solves this problem. Like the only reason that there was a cab problem to begin with is because there's the medallion system.
Yes.
And there's a shortage of cabs.
Artificial scarcity.
Yeah, okay, so technically he... I'm
going to go... Yeah, I'll lean with Daniel on this one. I think that was...
Just to balance it out, I'm going to say that it's not a crime. It's just a dick move.
I'll take that.
It's a total violation of social convention, but social conventions are not necessarily enforceable.
And I wouldn't say it's necessarily an NAP violation.
Yeah.
Would you say that he stole anything from her?
No, that's my point. Is it's up to the cabbie to decide whether or not somebody can ride in this cab. But again, the government's involved as soon as you have a cab, right? So.
Yeah.
In our roadless utopia, there would be no cabs.
Yeah, fuck roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be just teleporting everywhere. It's fine.
You guys have seen that pie chart that says, why I'm an anarchist? And it says, because I hate roads. It's like one of the biggest pieces of the pie.
Oh yeah, no, it was a black and yellow pie divided right down the center, and it said things libertarians hate, and it said roads, and the other one was each other. Other libertarians, yeah. Yes. They're mortal enemies with everyone and even themselves half the time. So, but that's good. If you're arguing about the minutia over what is correct and what isn't, you're not trying to take over other people's shit. So, Paul Schaefer's in this movie.
Man.
The musician guy.
Yeah. He's in there
David
briefly.
Letterman.
Yeah.
All right. The other scenario I wanted to ask about was when his recently dead boss Lou approaches and enters his office, and Bill Murray has a gun and shoots at him. And is he justified in shooting this intruder, not knowing who he is yet, not knowing what's going on? His back was turned. He was over there making a drink, and Bill Murray, who in New York City had a gun, which even in the 80s I think that was like a bit of a difficult thing. But do you think he was justified in shooting this intruder in his office?
Well, he's obviously a ghost.
Well, he's a rotting corpse.
Yeah, I feel like you have the reasonable expectation to not be confronted by a rotting corpse that's moving around. So Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I get like the ghosts interact. I don't know. Then every time they busted a ghost in the prequel to this movie, they were violating the ghost's rights.
Well, he didn't know he was a ghost yet, though. Like, upon his initial entry into the office, he's just some disheveled intruder.
Yeah, I guess he's scary enough. Though we could get into.
Doesn't he like break in though? He like smashes down the door.
Yeah, he does. He busts through the door. He's pounding on the door, and then the door explodes. So that's a much easier case.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah, if someone smashes and explodes my door, I'm unloading. That person's not coming in to sell me cookies.
I thought we broke the NAP.
But there is a big NAP violation in this movie for sure. I mean, it's not even a debate. It's when Bobcat Goldthwait comes back with a shotgun and starts shooting at Bill Murray.
No, you can't just fire people like Christmas.
He was shooting that shotgun in self-defense, clearly.
The woman from the censorship sexually assaults Frank Cross's competition while that guy's tied up under the mistletoe at the end as well.
She sure does.
But back then it was still funny, which is fine.
Yep.
So.
And it's a woman doing it to a man, so,
Yeah, he kisses his employee under the mistletoe as well with the Rockette dancer, or the Solid Gold dancer.
Yeah, that's right.
Which would have been some sort of violation, I'm sure, because he has some sort of vague institutional power, something.
Yep, power, privilege, so rape or sexual assault.
Yeah. See, we're ruining this film. This is a Christmas movie. It's about, and it comes from a better time for filmmaking. I know I've said that 100 times, so I'm going to beat it to death. Oh, what's that?
Oh,
Rothbard left again.
He's back now.
All right. Back now. Back again. Tag
How long
team,
did we lose you for?
Not too long. Not too long. You guys were talking about the actual NAP violation with Loudermilk coming back with a shotgun.
Yep, that's right. So we moved past the woman from the FCC, or is it FCC or the?
Oh yeah. She was Bill Cosby and the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny back then, right? Because we can still laugh about situations that obviously aren't okay. Like kicking a cat's not okay either, right? But
right.
He gets pissed off and kicks the cat across the room. Like it gets a chuckle out of me unless I think about it. It's a pretty horrible thing to do. So, but yeah, you can just kind of laugh stuff off, right? When it's just a story. It's not meant to. Well, it is. I mean, it's meant to convey ideas, and even some of them are universal. But it doesn't justify behavior. You're still making your own decisions after you watch the movie.
So with the ghost of well, it isn't a ghost, but after the ghost of she uppercuts him with the toaster, and he falls down into the sewer, and then he sees the frozen guy.
Oh, yep.
And this is like his guilt playing on him. But I want to reiterate, I mean, he's not responsible for that guy's choices. I don't understand why he feels so guilty. I mean, yeah, he could have given the guy like a couple bucks or whatever, but you don't have any positive obligations to do that. I mean, yeah, it's a nice thing to do.
No, the movie's about things that aren't like litigious, though. Like,
right.
Obviously, he's not obligated to do that. Otherwise, the movie would be about healthcare and taxes. It would be arguing. It would be arguing that like it would be like some righteous taxman that comes and collects taxes from the rich to give to the poor. Like that would be the movie. This is about
starring Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, something like that. No, one of those rich Hollywood people that talk all the time about spending other people's money and not owning guns, even though they're surrounded by guards.
And starring in movies where guns solve problems.
Yeah. Yay. Irony. Hypocrisy. Where would we be without it, though? In terms of that's like the last thing you can joke about, right? But anyway, it's about being a better person and finding that balance and things like that. And yeah, guys, I think it's perfectly reasonable to guilt people into being better. Now that doesn't mean Bill Murray should or Frank Cross should impoverish himself or start running his company in a fiscally irresponsible way. It's just that like he had an excess of resources, and he felt guilty for not solving problems that were right in front of him that, when confronted with them, were pretty bad. That's all.
I think that's a fair claim. You think that, so you agree with the movie's basic claim then? Yeah,
that we should that we should help each other and form communities, and that's the kind of sort of collectivism, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Like our
but you do
our
admit
community.
you do admit that he is helping people by working, though.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think this movie challenges that in any way. he's hard on his like highest up employees, and the movie talks about how maybe he should have been a little bit more generous with them because they're obviously very valuable to him. They illustrate that like his secretary, which is half of Bob Cratchit, is obviously extremely like important to his work. You know, she's submissive, obedient.
He has to work late.
Yeah,
right.
all that stuff, right? So, like, that unto itself, like, she should be able to negotiate her position better, but she's simply not because she's got too many, there's too much of a risk in renegotiating probably in her mind. I guess that's assumed, right? Because she lost her husband and she's supporting all these people. So she doesn't want to risk challenging this lunatic that fires people on Christmas and looks at himself in a mirror before he goes into a meeting, you know?
Right.
Or no, sorry, during a meeting in a drawer that's in the table. So yeah, it's not indicting him for doing it. It's just saying that, like, you know, he's almost realizing that he should have. I mean, isn't that the whole point? Is that he realizes that he should be making slightly different decisions in terms of the people in his life that are helping him?
Yeah, I think the movie says that, hey, you'll be a happier person if you be a little bit more generous with your resources and time and help and whatever. If you put your efforts more in this area as opposed to only in this other area, that you'll be more of a happy, complete, rounded person. And I think that's a perfectly valid statement to make.
Yeah, and don't be
Daniel?
as much of a dick a little bit.
Yeah, I'd be
dick.
sad though. I'd be really sad to, like, if Frank Cross was in my life and then he had this epiphany and he wasn't a total asshole anymore, because I think it's hilarious. Like,
oh man.
And these guys are really looking. Yeah, I mean,
these guys are really like
you don't get those genius lines if he's like Mr. Sappy Nice Guy.
Yeah, because he's not worried about, like, he's too worried about hurting people's feelings, and I don't think you should ever be worried about hurting people's feelings. Well, maybe that's not true. I don't like universals. They never work. But yeah, so at the end, and I do get choked up because he's not talking about some, like, we need to help all the people. He's saying you need to do something. You personally, if you have something to help your community with, you should personally engage that community and try to make it more functioning, right? Like, so that to me is just a much better message than most of what I see along these lines. Like, it's usually about how, you know, so...
You need to do something better, or government.
Yeah, and the idea of, like, healthcare didn't even exist when the source material came out. So, like, that's why Dickens sort of managed to get something I can agree with, right? Because, like, if you would come back to this 60 years after he wrote it, I'm sure that there would have been more socialist sort of solutions to the problems that he was presenting, right? Like, in terms of ideological solutions as opposed to practical solutions. So that's kind of why I get choked up with the Bill Murray thing, because he's just kind of like, yeah, give people a sandwich, or if you got an extra blanket, give them that. Like, and the homeless guy that died, he personally interacted with him, and I think is why he was so upset by that, because he said, like, this guy wasn't an asshole, you know, he wasn't trying to break into my house or anything. So.
Okay, so here's a controversial opinion, and it's not really held by me, but I'm throwing it in to stir up the pot. Today in the Tom Woods group, somebody posted that they don't like poor people, and that any kind of charity, in the way that, you know, we put our resources towards more of what we want to see in this world, that if you give poor people charity, you're just encouraging them to be poor, and you are essentially paying for them to be poor. So the guy in the Tom Woods group, I'm not going to mention names, is basically saying, you know, don't give any charity, you're just encouraging them to be stupid and poor, and the only way that they're going to, well, he was saying that, you know, when they die, they'll actually be useful. I'm not going to take it to that level, but that
like
you would actually be doing them.
Out of them, or?
Yeah, pretty much Soylent Green and whatever.
Okay.
But if you were to, you know, not support them, they would actually be forced to be, you know, productive and whatever.
Yeah, to an
What do you think
extent.
of that?
I mean, yeah, I understand. I just think that it's a pretty reductionist kind of way to argue it, because, I mean, if you give somebody too much money, they're not poor anymore, so you are eliminating the thing that you don't like, in a way, if that makes sense. I mean, if you're giving somebody enough money for a drink to continue living on the street and getting drunk, then yeah, I think obviously opportunities are better than cash, you know.
Okay.
Most poor people are less enjoyable to be around than middle-class people, generally. So my sister, a few years back, it was about minus 32, 35 degrees in Canada, which is centigrade. I'm not sure what that is, and you're getting close to minus 40 though, somewhere in there, right?
Really, really cold.
Yeah,
and
minus 40 is the same in both.
So you're going to die, right? Like these are conditions in which that if you can die of exposure, essentially, right? And she heard two homeless people, a man and a woman, arguing outside of her house about just normal relationship stuff. And she wanted to invite them in, but she was by herself and not able to defend herself, so she couldn't do that reasonably from her position. And it really upset her because they were people having they were talking about, oh, you never support me and all this stuff, right? But they were wandering around on the street at night in the dead of winter. Now, there are options where I live, so it's not necessarily a community's problem. There are options to do this, but I mean, at what point do you say too bad to somebody, right? When they're unable to help themselves, right? So.
Well, that springs to mind. I don't mean to hijack what you just said, but I was listening to a podcast recently called Risk, and it's a storytelling podcast, and the guy was relating a story of him and a couple of buddies traveling the ALCAN, the Alaska-Canada Highway, in the middle of winter, and they've run out of gas on the side of the road, and he made the claim that it's actually illegal if you run into a hitchhiker, because you will die almost, you will not last very long in those temperatures. It's actually illegal for you to not stop and pick up that hitchhiker. Do you know if that's true or not?
I don't know, because I would think that it would be the opposite. If anything,
well, I would think that,
in terms of legality, usually governments tend to. But okay, so we do have laws against evicting people or shutting off heat in the winter. So there are special limitations on property rights. And the energy here is sort of half government, half privatized. It's hard to explain, but basically highly regulated private. And you're not allowed to shut somebody's heat off. You can throttle electricity, you can throttle heat, not heat rather. You can throttle electricity, but you can't shut off heat or evict people. So it does stand to reason in the even harsher environments that they might have some sort of collectivist rules,
sort of
hard and fast rules.
It strikes me as a law that doesn't really affect anything. I can't imagine people that would. I mean, if you're gonna not pick somebody up, you don't care that there's a law anyway.
Well,
but
if they're going to die,
you don't need a law to tell you to do that anyway.
How would you enforce it if, the person that witnessed it is going to die of exposure in 30, 40 minutes?
Right.
Seems kind of pointless.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, sometimes words written down help people behave the way they're supposed to, I guess, is maybe the theory behind it.
I mean, I understand the theory, but it just seems like it's pointless. But I mean, that's not.
It is. Most laws are.
Lots of pointless rules. Yeah, exactly.
Most people don't want to murder each other. They don't want to steal each other's shit. We have an inherent understanding of how things are supposed to work. It's encoded in our DNA. So I'm not really.
Exactly.
The more laws there are, the more corrupt a society, right?
Yep.
Speaking of natural things, I guess I could segue into one point I had, because I thought a little bit of esoteric stuff. Because his name was Cross, which is obviously a Christian symbol. Bob Cratchit is divided into two people. So the female version, her husband died, and so Tiny Tim is lacking paternity, and Frank Cross sort of provides that with his good leadership, his sort of fatherly wisdom and charity, like the good king. And then Tiny Tim's able to speak. So I thought that was kind of, I don't know, I might be reaching there. And also, I mean, obviously the solstice and Christmas are the same thing, right? So it's an ancient astrological significance, because the sun's gone for 3 days, it's in repose, and then it returns. That's why we have right? So the sun returns. Yep. That's arguably why Jesus came back after 3 days as well in the Christian mythology. Yeah,
pretty blatant ripoff there, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but okay.
Well, and that's fine. That's just cultures eating each other. It's a cultural appropriation, like my Christmas tree.
Some of the original.
But when he comes back from the Grim Reaper and seeing the future and death and everything, there's a sun in that little hallway when he comes out of the elevator. I just thought it was interesting, because the sun of return. And then after that, he starts being like the good father, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
So I don't know if I'm reaching there, or I mean, the director might have done it subconsciously, or they might have wrote it in there on purpose. So.
I bet you it's on purpose. Yeah.
And that sun was like a sculpture in the hallway, in the elevator hallway.
Yeah. So I just thought that was interesting, because the sun leaves, and then we're all that's why we all come together in this horribly bleak time. We're waiting for the sun to come back, and we're waiting to see if we get through the winter and everything. That's why there's so much sort of not communism, but kind of pseudo-collectivist thinking. We're thinking more in terms of our community, and we're supposed to help each other out a little bit because the benefit to our society is increased because of like the value of help right now. In the past of this time of year, the value of help is higher than helping somebody in the summer or the spring, right? Because you might actually save a life by helping somebody, whereas like you help somebody in the spring, it doesn't really matter. They can just go sleep outside or whatever, right? I'm not sure how warm it is there where you guys are.
It's pretty cold. I mean, you're farther north than I am, but right now it's around. It's supposed to get into the teens tonight.
Okay, whatever that means. I should have brought a scale with me.
It's below zero for you.
Okay, yeah. We got a big dump of snow actually, and I thought it was kind of funny. I was walking home from getting some groceries, and there are laws. There's municipal bylaws where you have to shovel your walk, right, within a certain amount of time. Obviously, that's not enforceable. It's ridiculous to even have a law like that. But I was walking past the school, and it wasn't shoveled because it's, I don't know why. I guess because school's out. But they're obligated to shovel their sidewalk by the same law that a private residence is obligated. But because it's a city-owned property, they don't bother. I guess this.
The rules don't apply to everybody equally.
No.
Yeah, the laws are for the plebes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, man.
I thought you guys might appreciate that.
I do appreciate that. That's par for the course.
So during the election or during the lead up to the Democratic nomination, I saw, I don't know if it was photoshopped or not, but it was like sidewalk shoveled and then no shoveling and then sidewalk shoveled, and on the non-shoveled part there was like a Bernie Sanders sign sort of half poking up through the snow. Like we want the government to come shovel our walk for us. We don't want to do it ourselves, sort of thing. I thought it was funny.
All right, guys, I got a couple more notes, and you had mentioned the sun. I want to mention the moon. So during the Ghost of Christmas Future, the moment before he reaches through the televisions, they show a shot of the full moon, and it's a blood moon. And I think that's supposed to be foreboding and also an anchor to the sun being revealed later. And then speaking of the fatherly figure, when we go into the Ghost of Christmas Past, they jump in the 1955 taxi cab / DeLorean with the taxi driver Ghost drinking liquor while he's driving erratically.
Ghost can't break the NIP.
Yeah, that's right. They show young Frank Cross, watching television with his mother on the couch, and then Dad comes home. They have no decorations up, and he gives him a package, and it's like a cut of meat, like veal or something like that. And
5 pounds.
Yeah, 5 pounds of veal. And he says to him, if you want a choo-choo, you buy it yourself. You know, I don't know with all these child labor laws, like preventing kids from working. There's some other...
Yeah, no, I mean, and that ties into, so he had like a bad upbringing, right? His father was missing from his life, and it's
I thought this was great. He said,
it's a good lesson, for sure.
His excuse for not working was that he was 4. My kids work already. You know, if they want things, they earn money doing jobs.
Yeah, but I mean, generally parents set up some sort of small economy inside the household, right, where they do like tasks to benefit the house and then receive payment from like the parents as opposed to going out into the world as like an orphan. But yeah, I mean, you get kids still. It's not as much anymore, but when I was growing up, you could go shovel other people's walks at a pretty young age, and no one batted an eye at that kind of labor.
Not anymore.
It's one of those.
Then you need a permit.
It's not that. It's just the kids have everything they want, so there's no reason to work for anything. They're entitled.
I think there's a story from last year where some people were going around shoveling people's driveways, and they got in trouble for not having a license or a permit for it. Sort of like the lemonade stand stuff and maybe even mowing lawns.
Or setting up a garden in your front lawn. Or
wasn't there that lawnmower kid who went and mowed the White House, and Trump was like really happy that he was,
that sounds
cheering
like a setup,
his entrepreneurship and whatever, but everybody else was like decrying that he was promoting child labor.
Yeah, Mike, I think we do need you back for Zoolander, because there's that whole scene where they have the kids that hold the signs that say, let me work, let me work.
Yeah, well, I mean...
and when it comes down to it, child labor is really generally a question of starvation or doing something productive.
When I try to broach this subject with people, I bring up the fact that surely child actors are child labor. I'm not sure why we've made an exception for just one industry.
That's a very good point.
And people...
So
that is
if you can start with the hypocrisy, you can usually get a thin edge of the wedge in there and just pound it. I don't know. Yeah, I mean...
That's a good point.
Well, what do you do? Like, the intention is good. We're trying to, like, stop children from being, murdered in factories, I guess, is sort of the intention. Or, like, cleaning chimneys and stuff, but people... I don't know.
The government likes to take
No,
credit.
obviously
and then,
government's
you know,
not the solution.
Right.
Sorry?
I mean, they come up and they go, well, look at us. We wrote this law that says kids can't work anymore. But, I mean, it really was only capitalism with the accumulation of capital that allowed enough wealth so that kids didn't have to work in order to not starve.
Yeah.
To Dan's point, it wasn't the choice of, well, either be a happy-go-lucky little free running around kid or working in a factory. It was starving or working in a factory.
Yeah, and the laws were all trailing. Like they came in after the trend was already in place. Sort of like when OSHA was implemented, the trend was already a downward sloping trend in workplace accidents, but then OSHA took credit for making workplaces safer. Similar with weekends, labor unions took credit for that, but it was already being implemented voluntarily due to the capital increase, like you were just mentioning with child labor, and same with child labor laws. Like all these things get co-opted and the credit taken for all of the advances that capitalism provides, but then when regulation begets additional regulation and intervention and then causes a failure in something, then it's the market's fault.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So it's just kind of it was the perfect opportunity for what were essentially monarchies, dictatorships coming out of the turn of the century, to use that good intention to, you know, put kids into school and start indoctrinating them and start limiting their options and opportunities, right? To create a more, well, I mean, without getting into conspiracy shit, it does create a docile working force, working class, less ambitious. You can make point and fire soldiers out of that system a lot easier than a bunch of,
you talking about the Prussian education model?
Yeah, essentially, right? Like, you know, I would say child labor laws and educational standards sort of came out of the same idea, and it was leveraged off of the same good intention, right? And it was to solve problems that didn't exist, or weren't caused by the lack of those solutions.
I'll put on my Patrick McFarland hat and follow you down the conspiracy trail for a moment here. And I would add that I think labor unions not only advocated for child labor laws to be put in place and compulsory schooling and the minimum wage, all to eliminate competitors to their labor force.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a conspiracy. That's an established fact. I mean, there are quotes from, who was it, like LBJ's secretary of whatever, that, you know, this is going to get rid of the darkies and the unwanted, undesirable peoples.
Yep. So the reason we have a 40-hour work week and overtime benefits is because Henry Ford did it voluntarily.
FDR, sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the reason we have a 40-hour work week, weekends, and overtime benefits is because Henry Ford did it voluntarily to attract the best workers. And it became a standard, and then we just wrote laws to make that, you know, a legal sort of compliance.
Right, and then you take that a step further and you get the medical insurance, because that was added on because there were price freezes in wages. And so you had to come up with alternative means of attracting labor to your job. Because you couldn't compete on price, you started giving fringe benefits like medical insurance. Mm-hmm. And so then that becomes expected and normal. And 401ks were the next thing because there were caps on executive pay back in the 70s. And the 401k was a vehicle that was intended just for, you know, CEO type level, executive level. And now it's ubiquitous and almost mandatory in many respects, and becomes the expectation.
So when we've crossed the veil, it's when it goes from a societal expectation to legislature. That's my opinion. Once
right,
we've crossed that threshold,
but it usually starts out with the market finding a way around an obstacle put in place by government, an impediment that gets overcome, and then the government co-opts it.
Yes. So there's a line. There's one of the planets that the Little Prince goes to. Have you ever read The Little Prince?
I'm familiar, but no, I don't think so.
Antoine Saint-Exupéry. I'd say it's my favorite book. It's a kid's book, but so this Little Prince is telling us the stories of all the planets he's been to, and one of them is the guy that claims that he's king of the universe. And what is this? He's telling the Little Prince what to do. He says, "You must stay here." And he says, "If His Majesty wants his orders followed, then he should direct me to leave." And then the king says, "Very well. I demand that you leave," right? Essentially. So what authority tends to do, especially like unchecked authorities such as monarchs and dictators, is it tells people to do what they're already going to do and says that they owe them for the privilege of doing what they were likely to do anyway, if that makes sense.
No, it sure does.
And I like that it basically articulates that point in maybe a paragraph and a half, right? It's a good book.
Yeah, they like to take credit for our voluntary interactions and what we would normally do anyway without them.
Yeah.
And then they like to then they claim that we owe them something, so then we are obligated to obey when they declare that we have to go fight in some bullshit war or something like that.
It's analogous. Yeah, it's analogous to analogous. It's analogous to the relationship between a member of a church and a priest, because whatever connection you have to whatever God you have would, in theory, be there inherent in your being without any direction. And generally, whatever church you go to asks for some form of monetary compensation for directing you to God, if that makes sense. I tried to make that as vague and universal as possible to...
You did it.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, government is a religion. It's essentially a
well, I would say religion is the proto-government, because like we had charity, we had organization, we had sets of rules, and then some guy was like, well, let's write them down in a book and write down some stories that also tell you how to behave, and then at some point all that becomes law, you know?
Right.
And in a lot of ways, it's a much more effective form of government because it has no borders.
It has no borders, and it also is, it's unverifiable.
Yes.
So
so is the state, right?
There's no null hypothesis, right? Yeah. So right, you can't prove it wrong. So,
So taxes are the price we pay for something, civilized society or something like that.
By being uncivilized, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Mike, let me ask you this: are you familiar with Ralph Raico?
Don't think so.
So he was a historian, and he was affiliated with the Mises Institute. He gave many really great talks. He had this really low, booming voice that was great at storytelling. He's a funny guy. He died a couple of years ago, but he gave great presentations on the European miracle, the Industrial Revolution, World War I, World War II. And one of his presentations, he talks about how there was a power struggle between the individual countries and the monarchs in those countries against the religious that, like Robert was saying, was not pertained to or contained to a border. And it was in this vacuum, that struggle between them, that allowed the voluntary interaction and capital accumulation to flourish. And that's what sprang forth the Industrial Revolution, because neither one of those two power centers were able to exert control over individuals. And so it was that vacuum, that little gap, that little space that allowed it to flourish.
And it just exploded out of like the smallest. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'll try to find that talk. It's really good. It's probably 2 or 3 hours long, but I'll find it. I'll post it in the show notes below and also email it to you because it's really good. I don't know if it's like...
Oh, please do. Please do. I was just trying to process all that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like a fully, what people accept as the theory in the historian circles or not, but when I heard it, I was like, it was compelling.
History is written by the victors sort of thing, right? You can trust that somebody's perspective on history is their perspective on history and then do a few more. The stuff we have on the Roman Empire was, a lot of accounts by Caesar, so I'm not sure, you know what I mean? But
he's the most non-biased source, right?
Everyone's a hero in their own story, right, Robert?
Well, everybody else he murdered, so it's not like you're going to get their opinion. I'm sure if he was striving to be unbiased, then I'm sure he's as unbiased as a man can be, or as he can be, I guess. That's kind of a non-statement, but that's kind of how I view history, is my point. So,
all right,
speaking of which, if Frank Cross did that on his, on the live broadcast and told everyone to be charitable, and it happened now, people would be mining his Twitter quotes to find out violations or contradictions and hypocrisies within Frank Cross, and his statement would be, undermined by the idea that the person reading it was a hypocrite, which I think is kind of really beginning to limit us as a society. The whole ad hominem sort of fallacy, where, the truth is truth, right? Billie Jean's a good song regardless of what Michael Jackson did.
Sure, no, it's a good point.
I can't argue with whether or not that's a good piece of art. I can only, try to investigate. That's maybe a bad example, but it's sort of the worst one I could think of.
I think a lot of people have a problem separating what people say from the source.
Yeah, and the truth is truth.
The truth is truth. I know Stefan Molyneux has an argument along the lines of, if a guy comes out with a diet book who's, 500 pounds, you're probably not going to read it.
Yeah.
But like you said, truth is truth. But it is a time-saving measure to kind of consider the source. But there may be a tendency especially with how easy it is, to just go back and see what everybody's ever said ever and not consider, maybe people are growing and changing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, because Frank Cross did many things that would have been unsavory up until that moment, right?
Yeah, but my point is, you're not allowed to have epiphanies or change your mind anymore because you're held to a standard of this device, this machine that's recording and broadcasting everything you do. So it's just interesting. But like, it's just, I mean, you can say, if Bernie Sanders, what he's saying isn't true because he has 3 houses. Well, no, he's not. What he's saying isn't true because it's not true. The idea of helping people is a good idea. So if he abstracts what he's saying to be a little more palatable, when Bernie Sanders or any politician, right? Sometimes they'll back right off of saying anything. They'll make non-statements, and I can't argue with them because they're non-statements. Or they'll say something that's so universally true I can't deny it, whether or not I believe that person is gonna, right? The key is to just hold that person to the standard they just proposed, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, with him and the houses, I mean, that's hypocritical.
Yes, it is.
To his message.
But it doesn't, that unto itself doesn't undermine anything he's saying.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't
what he
attack
says
his argument. He
undermines
says
what
he
he
doesn't
says.
believe his own argument.
Yeah. So, I mean, it gives you good reason to critique and challenge what people say. But, I mean, if somebody says, like, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes, I'm like, yeah, that's good. It's a good thing to say. I wouldn't be like, no, I wouldn't be like, you know what, you didn't party on the whole time. I've seen you not party. Like, so, I just thought it was funny because, like, Frank Cross now, if they even tried to make this movie again, I'm not sure what you would do. It would just be like somebody doing that meme where the person has, like, the 2 tweets side by side, right, and then the dates, or the 2 Salon articles, the 2 Huffington Post articles, before and after the election. That kind of pettiness doesn't get us anywhere.
No, but it is fun.
Yes.
It is fun, but we should allow for growth. It's true.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask two more questions related to the back end of this movie. Well, it's really one question, but it's related to this movie and Trading Places. After what Loudermilk did and what Aykroyd did at the end of Trading Places, would you ever hire them back?
I've never seen Trading Places.
Well, he basically goes on a violent rampage as well, waving a gun around, planting drugs, trying to get the Eddie Murphy character fired. And Loudermilk, of course, goes around and attempts to murder Bill Murray.
Bill
Murray, has his epiphany and hires Loudermilk back at a higher level. And
I see. Well, okay. So Frank Cross, Bill Murray, had a lot of guilt weighing on him for his decisions, and he was maybe overcorrecting in that moment, but he saw, I mean, theoretically, he saw why this person was in the position he was, which, by the way, like, he gets fired and his wife leaves him immediately? Like, what kind of relationship did Loudermilk have? Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But whatever, he had a really shitty time leading up to it, and Bill Murray is, kind of a bit more cognizant of his influence and his responsibility as a leader, aka father, right? So I think that he just kind of it's an exaggeration of the point. Obviously, if somebody's shooting you with the shotgun, you don't. But he was, like, delirious too, right? So I don't know if I would do that, but I've never been visited by 3 spirits that showed me a better path to find balance in my life that's more in tune with nature. So, I mean, I'd probably just do, like, normal non-spiritually influenced things, like fire his ass or maybe even murder him or kill him because he's in self-defense. But yeah, like, I don't know. I think it's an exaggerated point to illustrate, like, how guilty Frank Cross felt about his decisions, something like that.
Right, but he was also trying to have Loudermilk not kill him, right? So
I see.
A little bit of
No, I think it was a genuine. I think it was a genuine proposal offer, and then Loudermilk helped him take over the station, which was a violation of the property rights of the person that owned that station.
I don't know if he's going to be able to have him hired back because, I mean, he's immediately fired. Frank Cross is absolutely fired.
They both have to go to jail, realistically, unless everyone involved was so moved by the spirit of Christmas that they all didn't press charges. But like, surely the guy that was sexually assaulted would... okay, that is an unforgivable plot hole, unfortunately. So I'll just put it in the list of movies that I've ruined for myself by thinking about them too much.
That's what we do here.
Yeah. No, that's fair. But I think, the spirit of it is supposed to be, it's allegorical. It's not. It's, when you start involving ghosts and epiphanies and all that kind of stuff, then you're into allegory and myth. You're not into real shit, right? So the use of violence in that was transferred from being against Frank Cross to being against the institution that was giving Cross that power, and then Cross was able to change the way that power was used, the media mind control or whatever, something like that. So yeah, you're right, though. It does advocate the use of violence very briefly at the very end.
To spread the joy of Christmas.
Yeah, by force. We'll show them
That's
our
right.
ways of peace by force.
You will be happy and joyful and cheer and be goodwill towards men, except for me, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's like the mass graves filled with people that didn't know how to share properly.
That's right. That'll teach
It is what it is. I think I like to try to hang on to the light, the dying light. As it's, I feel like it's going to return soon. So.
Rapidly receding into the distance. Any more points before we wrap this up and give our final reviews? No?
I just wanted to call out the secretary when she took her son to the doctor. She said, I think doctor is Latin for thief. $200 to, I don't know, tell him that nothing was wrong with him, or, he wasn't talking for whatever reason, or didn't know why. And I found that kind of interesting because this is back when, medicine wasn't nearly as messed up as it is now with all the interventions, government interventions. And I wonder how much that bill would be today here. Probably well over $1,000.
Well, the bill and the government interventions is one thing, but also it kind of assumes that going to the doctor isn't a risk. It's not a gamble. You are gambling. There's no guarantee that the doctor is going to know what's wrong with you.
Yeah, but you can
medicine is not perfect.
Like I bitch about every movie I see. That's not an indictment of the movie industry. I mean, I guess it sort of is, but and presumably she went to a shrink to figure out the psychology of the kid, and the doctor was like, haha, nothing, I don't know. His dad's gone, he doesn't speak. It's got some Latin word, some Freudian bullshit, or some pseudo-Freudian stuff that doesn't make any sense, and, but you're right. I mean, it's a risk, but you can certainly bitch about a consumer choice that didn't go your way since there's no return policy.
Yeah, that's fair. But it is. You are gambling.
The consumer should be way more savvy, especially when it comes to stuff that you can't return.
Yeah, that's why you do your homework ahead of time.
Oh, it's funny because my nephew's studying traditional Chinese medicine. Getting into acupuncture, and we were talking about the government of Canada wants to regulate herb usage. I mean, they want to certify and have certifications and stuff that's not just self-regulated, but from a governing body, which I'm completely opposed to, obviously.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a totally unrelated to that, but there's a politician in Hawaii that wants to regulate in-app purchases on video games, like loot boxes and that sort of thing.
Oh, well played, yeah. I guess because it's technically gambling, something like that?
Exactly. So he thinks it's technically gambling, so he's going to make it so that it's illegal for a kid, to buy it. And then, I don't know if these people realize what they do, but they must. They think it's awesome because then that justifies, more money, because you have to have some sort of a board that reviews all video games now. Yeah, I mean, I think people that make laws know they're going to make money off them. I mean, I don't know if I forget what it was, but I know in China, they have this massive regulatory hurdle in order to even release any kind of a video game in China. They have to pass a censor board and all kinds of other boards. And so the approval process is super long and onerous. I don't know if it's 6 months or a year or something like that, but I can imagine you spend all this time and resources to make a game, and then a year later all your graphics look like a year out of date and all this and whatever. It must not be great. But it'd be awful. Yeah, I mean, these government people, they think they're doing a good thing, but in reality they're just... I think you're giving them way too much credit. Am I? That they think they're doing a good thing. I don't think people that try to exert power over other people are there are very few that do that and think they're doing a good thing. I think they're pleasuring themselves. I think he is too. I agree, but he sells it as I'm protecting the children. Right, they always do. Because that's how you got to sell it. That's how you got to 100%, yeah. How do you want your oppression wrapped? Terrorism or protecting children? In a nice protecting children wrapping paper.
You got to vote for this like your life depends on it. You got to watch Frank Cross's special.
Well, the reason I was mentioning acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and stuff is, well, first of all, I respect it, but there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there historically in every field, but especially medicine because we don't always understand it. So it's the same. It's a very it's a very bountiful nest of intent that you can extract from people. You can be like, we got to protect the children, and look at these scumbags selling oils to people and crystals, and we have to protect the consumer. We always have to protect people because one asshole was a liar. When lying is already socially not acceptable and pretty much against the law in any kind of detrimental way where you harm somebody through lying, it's already a crime. So
and it already, in having those people out there, I think makes a more savvy consumer. If you have this government body that pledges to protect you, and then they come along and say, oh, we're going to protect you and keep all these people away from you, then you're basically going, oh, you're deer in the headlights. I'm like, well, he must be telling the truth because there's already this government agency that's protecting me from people like that aren't. So it creates a false sense of security among the consumers, and I think it makes a lazier and dumber consumer, or at least a more gullible consumer.
Yeah, I had it. It's lost now anyway. I am just overwhelmed when I think about it.
Okay. Can we move on? And
just the tinfoil hat comes on here for a second because there's all these overlapping sort of mechanisms, right? So when people start to pass on this kind of information to their children, we start making literature about how you shouldn't listen to your parents. You know what I mean? Like, old people don't deserve to vote and things like that. Those kinds of sentiments. Like, oh, a bunch of old people are all racist and they're behind the times, and the information they're giving you on not putting crystals on your chest to be able to, beat cancer or whatever, is old conservative bullshit, and you need to embrace, you know what I mean? And so we undermine the consumer and parenting in very similar ways, is all I'm saying. So like the father state, the corrupt father state, the nanny state, whatever you want to call it, is a bad parent. You know what I mean? As well as us, like, the state is interested in destroying proprietorship and family at the same time, right? So, tinfoil hats on, it's not a coincidence to me that these things all sort of coalesce into the same direction, the same sort of driving force.
Well, I don't think you need to have a tinfoil hat on to follow that line of thinking. I think it makes perfect sense.
Okay. Sorry, I was just preemptively doing it then because it goes way further for me. So.
Okay, well, I think the state has a vested interest in becoming the surrogate father, and it's a survival mechanism for the state. I mean, if you bribe essentially a ton of voters and other people with a bunch of stuff that you've stolen from other people, you're going to create an entire class and group of people that are going to support you. Yeah. And depend on you for their livelihood. The dependency class, if you will.
Okay, so this is why it's important to take care of our neighbors so they don't need the state. In summation.
There you go.
No, don't necessarily give the guy money for booze, but do try to contribute to the infrastructure, the social infrastructure of your neighborhood, or even hand out sandwiches or something, right?
Yeah,
Make me a sandwich.
Yeah, he's back. You got to get a Robert has to get some sort of icon or some sort of avatar because I'm looking at a phone number on white.
I've complained about Daniel multiple times to put a little face of me or something on the screen, but he won't do it. So maybe if you yell at him too, maybe he will.
As far as I know, that feature's not available.
Okay. Oh, fuck.
Next time I come over,
I completely undermine
I'll try and find it.
I completely undermine the conclusion again. Can we say it? Can we just do it? Mankind should be your business as well as business. The foundation of enterprise and commerce is people. So we should try to treat people in such a way that they don't need Big Brother, because we maximize the potential for industry and commerce when we're nice to each other. That was my takeaway.
Well, sure, and government hampers business at every end and steals from us. I mean, how much more charitable would we be if we didn't have 30% of our money stolen from us? I
don't know. All I know is that from our end, we can only affect that much, right? So plant gardens in your front lawn and give them to poor people or something. That's our side of the fight, I think. Instead of the big stuff, we'll just win by 1,000 cuts, right?
That'd be good. Yeah, be the change you want to see in the world.
All right, let's get to our summary and review for everyone. Mike C., you want to go first?
Black and gold.
Nice.
100%. Silver and gold. Silver and gold. Silver and gold. I loved it. I think they took everything good about the source material, updated it. They made an indictment of not capitalism but consumerism and our detachment, being raised by television, stuff like that. Just a bit of esoteric symbolism and some good themes. Bill Murray's a fucking god, so to speak, in terms of comedy. Pardon my French.
I mean he'll definitely be missed when he finally kicks off the mortal coil. I'm surprised he's had such a lengthy career at being as funny as he is. It's amazing. Black and Gold also for me. I have my issues with especially the original source material. I wish it had a few more points made about how we serve each other with capitalism, how that's how you make money in a capitalistic system, by serving and providing value to others. And how Frank Cross, even though he was being a complete asshole, he was providing a ton of value to people. But the movie, I think, in this version, like Mike is saying, it's more about his being a well-rounded individual, and you can also be not an asshole. So, but, you know, everything else I've already said in this episode also gets put into this, but Black and Gold.
All right, well, it's going to go trifecta with the Black and Gold, and I think that's just going to be my long-standing, anytime Bill Murray's in a movie, it's going to be Black and Gold. I can't think of one movie that I don't like with him in it. We had done Ghostbusters way back when, and if he was, in fact, ad-libbing in this one as well, that just only goes to grow his legend. This is a really fun movie, and I think we can, I mean, it's our line of Christmas movies we've been doing this whole month, and so this is going to come out on Christmas Eve, everyone, Christmas Eve. So I hope that it puts you in good cheer at the very end. It made these two ladies cry at the weepy finish. And, you know, just, hold your family a little tighter. Open a gift on Christmas Eve and then save the rest for the morning. Don't do it all at once. That's what we do in our household. But, Super Black and Gold, it's one of those movies that I think I'll try to watch this time of year every year. Yeah,
Bill Murray's just a legend. He's hilarious. So, yeah, check it out if you haven't seen it. Rewatch Ghostbusters, rewatch this, and pretty much anything else with him in it. He's just amazing.
Yeah, this one gets me through Christmas every year. Because it's, I'm usually cynical by the time end of November, so it kind of gives me a kick in the ass. It's kind of nice.
All right, well, very good. Well, hey, guys, thank you all for joining us, our audience. This episode can be found at actualanarchy.com/56. Mike C. was our guest at the episode 47, so you can find his music listed there and also on the show notes page here. And if you like what we do here, do check us out at the patreon.com/readrothbard. We did just update one of the bonuses, and that is the Rothbard repository, which is a searchable database of Murray Rothbard lectures. I just added 23 new lectures. 10 of them are video of Murray speaking. So now there's, I think, 84 lectures, over 100 hours of video and audio that you can search for the timestamp of hundreds and thousands of quotes of things that he said on any topic that you can think up. And that's a bonus at the $10 a month support level. You also get the behind the scenes and the Kathleen Turner Overdrive, which we share with our Patreon supporters. So thank you for joining us, and Merry Christmas, everyone. I'll hand the mic over to Mike for a final Christmas message, and then to Robert, and then we'll close out the show.
God bless us, everyone. Whatever that means to you. Forgive what you can, give what you can. Save enough for yourself to keep helping others, kind of thing.
The love you make is equal to the love you take. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
All right, Merry Christmas, everyone. We might do a little bit of Kathleen Turner Overdrive coming up now.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the Chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 do.